Thank you, Peter. So, welcome everyone. We have 20 joining us. Hopefully, the other 15 or 20 will be with us soon. Um, First, I'd like to, on behalf of my organization, the Interfaith Assembly on Homelessness and Housing, and on behalf of the Partnership for Faith-Based Affordable Housing and Community Development, who are sponsors of this event, and the partnership includes, in addition to the Assembly, New York State Council of Churches and the Interfaith Affordable Housing Collaborative. We're sponsoring this event. We're very happy to have all of you join us. And the purpose of the event is really to give particularly faith leaders, but others as well, an opportunity to express their concerns and what they've heard about the City of Yes, and to hear from the city as to what it's proposing to do and have a conversation. So again, my name is Mark Greenberg. I'm the Executive Director of the Interfaith Assembly. We're joined by Peter Cook. Peter, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, Peter Cook, Executive Director, New York State Council of Churches, and a member of the partnership, and also Vice President for Interfaith Affordable Housing Collaborative.
And Rashida?
Hi, my name is Rashida Tyler. I'm the project manager for the Interfaith Affordable Housing Collaborative, and the Deputy Executive Director of the New York State Council of Churches. And it's great to see everyone on this Monday.
Thanks. And John?
Hi, folks. Good to see many of you again. John Mangan, Head of Housing at City Planning, here to answer any questions that you have and to just share in this work with you.
Great. And just to clarify a process that for some may seem inscrutable, John is here with the Department of City Planning, and we'll be talking today about a hearing of the City Planning Commission, which is not the Department of City Planning. Department of City Planning is an agency of the government, of New York City government. The City Planning Commission is an entity that hears from the public about city planning issues. So today we'll be hearing from the city. On Wednesday, the City Planning Commission will hear from others. And we're going to talk today about how some of us may want to participate in that hearing on Wednesday. Also, I want to take the liberty of asking one of our honored guests, Gail, if you'd like to say hello and introduce yourself. It's so great that you're joining us. I don't want to put you on
Hi
the
there, I'm actually representing Gail. I'm an intern for her office. So I'm here taking notes.
Okay, great. I see Gail is here. So Gail, let us know if you want to say anything. We'll give everyone an opportunity to share, but certainly I consider Gail one of the great public servants, and I'm so glad that she's with us today. And she's gone through this for years and years. She's seen this before, and it's great that she's with us. Anyway, so now Rashida, I'm going to turn it over to Rashida for a few minutes, and Rashida is going to ask everyone to introduce themselves, but also primarily to tell us what you've heard about the City of Yes, your concerns, your information, misinformation, anything that you've heard. We want to hear from you, because then the city will be giving us a presentation and responding to some of the concerns that have been expressed. So, Rashida, the floor is yours.
Yeah, so Mark, you pretty much just said it, said everything I was going to say. Again, good morning and welcome to everyone. So we'd love to do a go around of everyone who is here, just asking your name and your organization, and then also what you know about the City of Yes so far. If you don't know anything, or this is your first time hearing about the City of Yes, it's okay to say that too. I think that's important as well. If you're a veteran and you're very familiar with the City of Yes, you can say that as well. But we just want to do a quick lightning round to get everybody introduced, and then also gauge what you know about the City of Yes so far.
You want to call on people and make it practical?
I'm going to start with who I see on my screen. Yeah. And so I'm going to start, I usually start to my left, but let me see. I see Dorita Jackson.
Yes, I'm here. How are
Hi.
you?
Good, how are you?
Hi. I'm very well, and I'm happy to be on the panel. I don't know much about Yes, but I'm ready to learn. Darn.
Cool.
Can you hear
And what
me?
organization are you with? Yes.
Well, I started my own organization. I'm glad that you asked. I started an organization. I'm still in the setting up stages, but I did get my LLC and my EIN. What I'm doing is non-medical home health care. So what we do here is provide home services for individuals who are in need, such as light housekeeping, um, preparing meals, doing
Cute.
light errands. I think that, in my personal opinion, when you have clients that require home care, I think that it's a good thing to read the newspaper to them. That's what we do, or
Thank
read
you.
a storybook. And that's about it. And I just want to say, I was looking through some business cards last night, and I came across Miss Gail Brewer's business card. But I'm glad to be happy to listen to what is going to be said. Thank you.
Great. And Leah, I know you popped on a little bit earlier, but if you just want to introduce yourself and what you know about the city of Yes.
Hi, my name is Leah. I'm an intern for Gail Brewer's office. So I'm just here to learn and take notes. And yeah, I really don't know much about the city of Yes, but I'm very interested in learning more.
Cool. I see Terry Troya from Staten Island.
Oh, hi. I'm not Terry Troya, but I'm Deb Young and I work with her. So also just here to take notes and listen in. Thanks.
Right. Are you familiar with the city of Yes?
To a certain degree, yeah. But again, it's not really my area of expertise, and I'm here on her behalf. So taking notes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Thanks.
Carolyn Dunn. Are you able to unmute, Carolyn? Okay, so I don't hear Carolyn. I see Brenda Breckman.
Yes, Berkman.
Introduce yourself and your impressions of the city of Yes, Brenda.
I don't have any impressions yet. I'm with the New York City Presbytery's Justice Ministries Committee.
Very good.
Very cool. All right, and I see John Wood. And please introduce yourself, your organization, and what you know about the city of Yes so far.
Hello, everyone. John L. Wood. I am a pastor of faith, United Methodist Church here on Staten Island. I've been here 5 years come in August. And I'm I'm being introduced as I speak now.
Thank you. And I see, yeah, Isabel Abreu?
Hi, everyone. Isabel Abreu from the Office of the Public Advocate, and I'm just here to learn your perspective on City of Yes.
Tommy, is Tommy Bond? Is that, I think you went earlier, right?
I did not go earlier. No, I did not. But I'm the assistant to Terry Troy at Project Hospitality on Staten Island. My understanding of the city of Yes is to basically change zoning laws and what have you in order to provide more housing and deal with the housing crisis that we're dealing with in New York City. And I believe that it's a wonderful thing. And I honestly can't for the life of me understand why we're facing so much opposition.
I see Meta, who is a wonderful architect who is on the board of conveners with the Interfaith Affordable Housing Collaborative, and I can't say enough good things. I love Meta, so. Yeah.
Yes, hi, I'm an architect and urban designer with the Collective for Community, Culture, and Environment, and we work with nonprofit housing groups as well as faith groups. And our firm is actually submitting testimony on the 10th and in writing. So I have a few comments about the city of Yes.
So, And I see a Deb Young. Did they already call on you?
Oh, yeah. Hi. I thought I had been under the over name of Terry Troya, but I'm listening in. Thank you.
Okay. And Flora Goldston.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Right. No, can you hold on? Can you hold on a second, please? I'm the health coordinator at Walker Memorial Baptist Church, and we have a lot of seniors at our church. We are trying to check on different affordable houses and different things for the people in the community. That's what I'm online for, to see what I can hear to take back to my church for the seniors at the church and for the community.
What church did you represent?
Walker Memorial Baptist Church, 120 East 169th Street, Reverend Bush is my pastor.
Oh man, thank you for coming. And Trisha Clayton.
Good morning.
Okay, I'm sorry. Still there?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm still here.
Did you want to share something, Tricia, about your impressions of City of Yes? Anything you know?
I'm sorry, I don't know anything about your.
Okay, and if it's not working to do by voice, you can put it in the chat too. And Lorna Wilson.
Yes, good morning, everyone. I am Lorna Wilson from Faith United Methodist Church. I am a little bit familiar with the reading about the City of Yes. It's the mayor's initiative to amend zoning rule to help alleviate housing crisis, and especially now that we have a migrant crisis. So that's much I know. My pastor is John Wood, who was just on. I'm from Faith United Methodist Church.
Amen. And I don't know if Gail Brewer is here. Or was that Leah?
I think there are many Gail Brewers here, but Gail, if the real Gail Brewer is here, then just raise your hand. We'd love to hear from you whenever you're free.
Okay. So I think we are almost done. I see a couple more people came into the room after we started. So if you haven't been called on, if you just raise your hand and I will come to you.
I think we have Jack.
One number.
Yeah, Jackie.
sorry?
Hello, Rashida.
Hi.
Hello.
Yes.
Hi.
Hi. I'm on call today because I'm just having some technical issues. However, I understand that I'm here on behalf of State Healthcare and the Sunday School Network. We have a couple of missions that we have in mind. I understand the City of Yes was under Mayor Adams' plan or administration for new or innovative housing solutions and other things, but I think it's actually ruining the city. As I go by, there are a lot of work permits, a lot of things that are being done unlawfully. A lot of times people say contracts can't be broken when any contract can be breached. So I just think it's just a mission to destroy the city actually, and not boost the economy. It's just very sad. We could just see it. Lifeguards, children drowning. We have a large migrant population. I'm from a migrant family. It's a lot of, we could say, governmental issues that are occurring, but I hope we can come to some sort of understanding with what's actually happening with our society and our faith-based organizations before we actually lose substance. Thanks again.
Thank you. I do want to mention the City of Yes has not been enacted just yet. So we're going to be talking about it. This is a policy where faith leaders, everyone in the community still has an opportunity to be heard and to have an influence. So that's where we're holding these meetings. But I thank you very much for your contributions, because we've heard a lot of what you've said throughout the city. So we're going to come back to that in the end. I just present aware of time, and I don't want to go too far over. Is there anyone that I missed?
Luana has her hand up, and also Jackie, I think, and also I see
Okay.
Karina. And yeah.
Okay.
Hi, how are you? I just Karina Escamilla, the Deputy Director of the Latino Religious Leadership Program. I work at Latino Commission on AIDS, and we work with 26 churches. And I hear about it's a housing opportunity, but I'm here to listen and learn. So thank you.
Very cool. Thank you for being here. And the other one's Luana.
Hello, Rashida. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mark. Good morning, everyone. My name is Luana Green, and I represent God's Promises New Life Tabernacle, also First Fruit Community Outreach, and Midtown South Community Council. So I'm here. I know a bit about the City of Yes. I don't think in its entirety that that policy is good for New York City. Well, I know you'll go into it, but I don't think it represents the moderate and low income people. And I think it's going to be detrimental to those people. So in addition to other things. So I thank you for the opportunity to be here and to listen and learn. Thank you.
Good to see you, Luana. I think Jackie
Mark,
is got her hand up, right? Jackie
Yes,
Leduc.
hi everyone. My name is Jacqueline Leduc. I work for ATD Movement on Together in Dignity. We are a movement who take in consideration the experience of people with living experience in poverty. It's a civil society movement, and yes, we know mostly of the people we represent have housing issues. So for us, it's very important to learn about this kind of conversations. Thank you so much. I'm here to learn and listen to. Thank you.
Cool. So Mark, if I remember correctly, we're going to go into some of the feedback that we've heard in the two meetings so far. So Peter, did you want to say or ask the first question and then I'll ask the second, or?
Yeah, why don't we just kind of riff on this and alternate? So
yeah,
I
don't mind asking the first one.
Yeah, why don't you ask the first one? That
Okay.
seems to be the big recurring one that we get a lot.
Right. So I'm going to get over to the document. Actually, it just kind of vanished on me. But basically, this is the third meeting that we have held. And we started convening these meetings because we spoke with faith leaders from Far Rockaway, Queens, all the way through New York City. And some faith leaders had not heard about the City of Yes. Others had a really negative opinion. And everybody had these different pieces of information. And we wanted to make sure everyone had the same information and was able to, again, make their assessments appropriately. And then see what the City of Yes can do for the community. And then also see what changes the community might want to make to the City of Yes. Because as we know, many faith leaders want to help during the housing crisis because, you know, they're losing congregants, they're losing community members. And a lot of things like restrictive zoning and zoning, prevent them from actually building that affordable housing. And so one of the kind of things that we've heard from faith leaders, or as a reoccurring theme, is that the City of Yes would actually incentivize deep-pocketed developers to really go into less advantaged areas to gentrify and to displace. Some critics of the plan point to the rezoning of Midtown, which has enabled the hotel industry to proliferate while affordable housing was pushed out. And then also point to the fact that there's affordable housing such as Elliott, Chelsea, and Fulton housing that are under threat of demolition. So far, the response from the city that we've gathered seems to be that because there's currently wealthy areas that are hard for developers to invest in, when the City of Yes passes, they're actually going to look elsewhere in terms of the wealthier areas to develop, where they'll make more money. If you make it easier for them to invest in wealthy areas, then there's actually less pressure on other neighborhoods, which can welcome more mom and pop and women and minority owned developers. So under the city of yes, if you increase housing supply of all kinds across the city, there's actually less of an incentive to invest in disadvantaged neighborhoods. So, you know, really, this is a question that we've had to the city. Is this your answer to those who are worried about displacement? And if there are any other arguments that the city would like to make and as to why displacement won't happen. So that's kind of a question for the city officials who have joined us. So we have John Mangan, and also we're later going to be joined by the head of the Planning Commission, who I'm not sure is on the call right at the moment, but do we want to pull in John to answer this question?
I would love to have the opportunity, Rashida. I mean, the status quo today is the product of just layers, I would say layers of inequity in the system as it exists today.
Dale Brewer's office, may I help you?
The way that this is all laid out, I would say these proposals are a product of our citywide fair housing report that Housing Preservation and Development led in 2019 to 2020, which addresses impediments to fair housing in New York City. It talks about how we got to where we are today, which is an amazingly diverse but very segregated city, and addresses, you know, goals, strategies, and concrete actions that we can take to affirmatively further fair housing. As it is today, over the decades, it tends to be wealthier neighborhoods, more politically connected neighborhoods tend to use the land use process in order to get what they want, which is often to prevent development from happening. And so we have very wealthy, often whiter parts of the city, Upper East Side, Upper West Side, parts of Lower Manhattan, that over years have layered on restrictions in a way that makes it very hard to build housing there. As New York City's population grows, people look farther and farther out in search of housing they can afford. That puts a ton of pressure on, you know, the Harlems of the world, the Central Brooklyns of the world, you know, farther and farther east in Queens, neighborhoods that have historically been sources of affordable homeownership opportunities or affordable rentals. You know, for generations, like places where many of your churches are all of a sudden becoming so expensive that, you know, I've talked to pastors whose congregants are disappearing because they, you know, generation to generation, families can't afford to stay in the neighborhood. And so what these proposals really attempt to do is to create a little more housing everywhere, to open up neighborhoods that have become closed to more housing over the decades, largely since the 1960s, in a way that just puts a ton of pressure on lower income families, lower income neighborhoods, and just makes it especially hard for people who struggle to afford the rent. And, you know, there's consensus across all the folks who work in the housing policy realm. If you go to academic institutes or nonprofit housing research institutes, that the fundamental issue is just this lack of housing in New York City, that there's not enough of it. And so when people are competing for a limited amount of housing, guess who tends to win out? It's the people who have more money. So if we want to address those human consequences, the high rents, gentrification and displacement pressure, overcrowding, homelessness, we have to figure out ways to build more housing. And the approach that we're taking is for the first time to look absolutely citywide, from the lowest density parts of the city to the highest density parts of the city, and to say, hey, if we all contribute, if every neighborhood contributes to producing more housing, we can actually make a big difference in those human consequences without overburdening any particular neighborhoods. We really want to be respectful to the things we hear about neighborhood residents who love the character of their neighborhoods. We don't want to change that. You know, we're not talking about, you know, changing neighborhood character in these places. We're talking about a series of textured proposals that can enable a little more housing in neighborhoods at the range of densities, even from single family neighborhoods all the way up to the densest parts of the city. And fundamentally, that's the way you address the displacement pressures the displacement issues that we hear from residents across the city. Displacement is always and everywhere the result of not enough housing, whether it's in a neighborhood, whether it's in a borough, whether it's citywide, whether it's regionally. If there's not enough housing in that geography for the people who want to live there, guess who loses out? It's people at the low end of the income chain. And so these proposals actually do many specific things for faith-based organizations that want to use their property to build housing. That's the core thing that we can talk about today, and we'll get into that. But I also want to say that, you know, this is something that will help churches whose congregants have had a hard time staying in the neighborhood. So that's the next circle out. And then finally, you know, something, I'm a member of St. Mary's on Grand Street. The way that our congregation has remained vital is we got about 1,000 units of affordable housing on our campus. And so, you know, that's the reason I got involved in housing. My first job, I've mentioned before, was in a faith-based community for adults with developmental disabilities. I was a live-in assistant there. So I see this as a continuation of that moral work too. I mean, that's why I'm involved in it, because this is the best way that I know of to try to do something for, you know, New Yorkers who are just really struggling under the status quo. So that's the next circle out for me. And so, you know, being able to talk to groups like this to try to build support, not just because of your self-interest, because of what this can do for your congregation, but also what it can do for your congregants, what it can do for, you know, people who are struggling. I know that all of us here, you know, have a moral mission, and I think that this is, you know, an utterly worthy one, and we would really like your support for that.
Thank you, John. And I see we're now joined by the chair, Dan Garodnick. I know his time is very limited, so if I could, and we're right on time.
I did have a follow-up question for John. It's on the same vein. John, and then we can, of course, I'll pass back to you, Mark, to introduce the chair. So John, one of the other criticisms that comes down from academia around policies like the City of Yes, which is tends to be yes in my backyard, or YIMBY policy, is that the housing crisis is not just something we can only build our way out of through housing production, but it also ties to things such as wages, and the fact that wages are not rising at the same pace. Would the City of Yes actually accomplish the goal of creating affordable housing and allowing those who are still earning the same wages in the lower wage realm, are they still going to be able to afford the affordable housing that's coming up?
That's a great question, Rashida. And I want to say, I teach in a planning school. I've done that every year for the last 10 years. I've taught at law schools as well on housing and land use issues. I would actually say that there is basically an academic consensus that housing shortages are at the root of that range of human consequences that I just laid out. High housing costs, the gentrification displacement pressures, the overcrowding, the homelessness, segregation. That if you go to any academic institute, Furman Center, Turner Center, University of California, Harvard Joint Center for Housing Studies, read a newspaper too. You read the newspaper articles, it's straight news at this point that the housing shortage is causing that range of difficulties, especially for people at the lower end of the income chain. And so, well, yes, it's totally correct that like the housing shortage is not like at the root of all of our problems, and that solving the housing shortage will solve everybody's problems across every possible realm. That's obviously not the case. However, it is totally necessary if we want to address those issues to address the housing shortage, in addition to all the other types of things that we need to do in conjunction in order to help people who struggle to pay the rent. So I would say that addressing the housing shortage, proposals like this are necessary, but not sufficient. We are city planning. We deal with the zoning. And so we are taking a big, giant leap on the issues that we control that are at the center of the problems that you just mentioned. And we are, of course, working with a range of other city agencies on things like making sure that vouchers are getting in the hands of people who need them and that they can use them, making sure that, people are getting out of the shelter system, making sure that we're, we did City of Yes for economic opportunity as well, to support, economic development and wage growth among people in New York City. So we're not solving all the problems, but we are solving a core set of issues that are necessary to address if we, care about those lower down the income chain. And I think Dan is on.
I think Dan is Lara. Is Dan on as well? Lara came in with Dan's name.
Dan is on.
Dan is
there he
on.
Good. Welcome. Okay.
Yeah. So I want to hand it over to Dan. Thank you so much for joining us, Dan. We're doing a little bit of background and just teeing things up for the hearing. Chair Dan Garodnick has been leading city planning. This is the third of 3 citywide City of Yes proposals. And I, want to pass it over to him.
Great. Well, thanks, John. And thank you to all of you for your interest and support of this effort. This is incredibly important. We think that there are enormous benefits here for faith-based organizations, and it's a big and complicated proposal. It's ambitious. It's something that we have really not attempted to do in New York City before, and as a result, it's hard. It's complicated. So your voices are really, really important here. You're going to hear a lot more detail about all of the substance, and I'm sure some of it you're all well aware of already, but, we want to give more flexibility to faith-based organizations that want to be able to use their own property. This is true, by the way, for faith-based organizations. It's also true for homeowners more generally in this proposal. We know that there are congregations that are struggling as high housing costs make it hard for congregants to stay in their neighborhoods. We want to address that. And we realize that there are opportunities that are being left on the table for faith-based organizations that they want to take advantage of. And this really would help clear away a significant number of those barriers. So we're excited. As John mentioned, this is the third of 3 City of Yes initiatives. The first one was on the environment that the City Council approved at the end of last year. The second one was on economic opportunity that the City Council approved just a few weeks ago. And this is the third of 3. We picked up ahead of steam. We're very encouraged by the fact the City Council has already approved 2 of the 3 of these, but this one is, of course, the biggest and most complicated, but it also is the one that has a real moral imperative to it. Like, inaction is not an option for us in New York City as it relates to housing. The human costs of our failures are being felt by a lot of people at every income level, whether you're homeless and trying to find a home, or whether you are paying market rate rents and trying to get a paint job. The imbalance between landlords and tenants in New York City is extreme. We see gentrification pressures. We see displacement pressures. We see an imbalance of where housing is being created in the city in a way that, only a few neighborhoods are really producing housing for the rest of the city, and there are entire neighborhoods that are functionally shut off. We have 59 community boards. Last year, 10 of them produced as much housing as the other 49 combined. So these arbitrary walls that exist around neighborhoods should not be. And we have designed a proposal here that we believe is both respectful of neighborhoods around the city, while also opening the door a crack to allow for some amount of housing in every neighborhood. And so the faith-based organizations are a key part of all of that. And it's really important to have your voices in the public discussion throughout the process. And we really do want your support. We have a hearing coming up on Wednesday. And we're, we hope you'll join us there, and there'll be plenty of other occasions too, to make your voices heard. But I just wanted to come on and just share with you those initial thoughts, and thank you in advance, and look forward when, John is going to go through all the details and Lara is going to go through the details about the hearing. But we're really, really looking forward to partnering with you, continuing to partner with you through this process. So thank you again. Thanks, John. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Dan. So I know Peter Cook had a question. We've been gathering questions from concerns that we've had in the last 2 gatherings that John was terrific at, and also looking at some other things in the news. I think Peter wanted to ask a kind of general question about how we're sure that this will not be an avenue for developers to take advantage of another set of rules that they can subvert. So Peter, did you want to frame that question?
So thank you, Mr. Grodnick, for joining us. And, this is a really ambitious effort, and, we're excited about it. But our job here is to really try to look under the hood and ask, the tough questions. So we've heard the theory about displacement in our communities, where the theory goes that wealthy developers are going to come in under the City of Yes and gentrify and displace communities in the outer boroughs. The theory is that will less likely happen if you make it easier for those wealthy developers to develop in places like Midtown, so that they can put their capital there. However, we have people in Midtown who are worried that those wealthy developers are not going to build the level of affordability in these wealthy areas that are required, and particularly caring for the homeless and people who are very low income. Could you sort of talk a little bit more about this trade-off, and is there any more nuance you would add to that argument?
Yeah, well, I certainly would like to talk about this a little bit, and then of course John can add anything that I might have missed here. But the first thing is that the prime culprit for displacement pressure is our lack of housing supply, because it has the effect of driving anybody with resources to the places where they can find housing. And that, of course, creates displacement risk. There's been lots of academic studies showing that actually creating the housing itself at all incomes, and that includes, by the way, market rate housing, but certainly with affordable housing, that reduces displacement pressure. How? Well, because it creates a place for people who otherwise are creating those pressures on lower income neighborhoods, gives additional options, and it leaves everybody else alone. And there's good academic research on this. It's been studied extensively, and it's been borne out in other cities that have shown that it reduces displacement pressure, and of course also reduces prices for everyone. As it relates to Midtown and affordability, one of the really important parts of this proposal is what we call our universal affordability preference, which is an incentive in medium and high density areas, which of course would include Midtown Manhattan, to include affordable housing as part of bonused development rights. So we would allow for roughly a 20% bonus if that 20% bonus is permanently affordable under zoning. And that's a really important tool for us to get affordable housing in medium, high density areas, more affluent areas, consistent with our fair housing goals to make sure that we have affordable housing in more affluent areas. That's what this is all about. And by the way, we reduced the AMI level for that category of housing creation from what historically was in our voluntary programs, which was 80% of AMI, and a very strict 80%, where you actually had to really get at 80%, to 60%. So we've reduced the level of income for eligibility here, and we've allowed it to be averaged. So you could have 40 and 80, you could have 50 and 70, as long as it is averaging out to 60. So, to us, the creation of housing writ large is critical to reducing displacement pressures, reducing costs for everyone. And as it relates to creation of affordable housing, well, we are proposing a dramatic increase in the opportunity here in medium and high density areas. We would have created a lot of housing in the last 10 years. I think, John, the number was what, 20,000 units
right.
of housing? Is that right?
Yeah, income restricted housing. Yeah.
20,000 units of income restricted housing if this program had been around since 2014. So enough to house another 50,000 New Yorkers income restricted. So the affordable income restricted housing. So we think it's an important way for us to get affordable in even more affordable in medium and high density areas, places like Midtown that you cited. John, anything you want to add there?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, so we're not saying that housing, this is housing for people at virtually every level of, it's not just low income housing, but it includes low income and income restricted housing, but it also includes housing for the other folks who, as we've been hearing, if they can't find housing at a higher level, they're going to dive into the lower income areas and displace people who can only afford those low income sites. So it's really not, the enemy is not affordable, is not upper income or middle income housing. The enemy is the absence of low income housing and the scarcity that creates more difficulty for those with no other options.
That's right, Mark. I sometimes lost here is just the message that this is the biggest proposal for affordable housing that the city has ever forwarded. And we expect to create more income restricted housing at lower AMIs, that average of 60% in the next 10 to 15 years than all zoning programs have created since their inception in 1987. And we're doing that by taking a framework that works today, the tax benefit in conjunction with zoning to create more and better affordable housing than either can alone. It works today within a very small geography, about 10, 13% of medium and high density districts. And we are taking that framework that works and expanding it across all medium and high density districts. And as with every component, the real power of this proposal is in that geographic breadth. Doing a little bit everywhere, just taking things that work and expanding that across broad geographies. And we think the approach where every neighborhood is working together on this, we think it's fair, we think it's equitable, we think it's the best, most comprehensive way to approach these like really daunting issues that the housing shortage creates.
I wanted to say there was one question we got in a previous conversation, was really asking, how does the city guarantee, and John, you answered this before, but I think it's worthy of repeating, guarantee that the income restricted housing will indeed remain income restricted? What kind of teeth does the city have in making sure these units are affordable ongoing?
Yeah, this is nothing new. When we create an affordable unit apartment through the zoning, you record a restrictive declaration against the property that's there forever going forward that restricts particular apartments in that building to particular AMIs. We're also going to add a condition here that it goes on the certificate of occupancy so that it's plain to any DOB examiner or any, resident of the apartment building who looks up the building, where the affordable housing is and at what level it remains affordable. HPD has actually, our sister agency, Housing Preservation and Development, has not had difficulty enforcing restrictions on affordable apartments created through zoning at all in the past. And so we really don't expect to have any problems with that in the future. These types of restrictions are ironclad.
But the other question is, and I was present at the conversation between Brad Lander and the person who was the head of HPD at the time, Sean Donovan, who went on to head housing for the federal government, when we started talking about inclusionary housing. And Sean was saying, I guarantee that the developers will take advantage of the opportunity. And Brad said, but you need to mandate it, need to require it. So how do we deal with that balance? Is affordable housing required in this plan, or is it only incentivized?
So we have mandatory inclusionary housing that will continue to exist and will continue to be applied in the future when we change the zoning in ways that significantly increase residential capacity. For this, because it's incremental, because it's citywide, in order to maximize the amount of affordable housing that we create, we are creating UAP, Universal Affordability Preference, that, like I said, takes that framework that works today and just expands it geographically. As areas of the city get rezoned in the future for significantly higher density, we'll apply mandatory inclusionary housing. But if we're not increasing density, significantly, then affordable mandates, as we've seen in San Francisco, as we've seen in Westchester, they tend to make it more difficult to produce housing and actually reduce the amount of housing and affordable housing you create. That would be kind of like a housing policy own goal, and so we do not want to do that. So this plan is calibrated to maximize the amount of affordable housing we create.
It doesn't require affordable housing, it just incentivizes it. Is that the case?
But again, it's like we're taking that framework that produces affordable housing today in a smaller geography, and we're blowing it out to 100% of medium and high density districts. So we've heard a lot of chatter like from City Club or from Greenwich Village Society for Historic Preservation, from these anti-development organizations that say, oh, you don't know if you'll actually create affordable housing. This is not a new thing. We're taking that framework that does produce affordable housing today, and we're just expanding it geographically. So yes, this is the biggest proposal for affordable housing that we've ever proposed.
Thank you, John.
Wow, okay. So I'll just do one more follow-up question. So with regards to historic districts, we saw in Community Board 8's report, I read it, that they were concerned that City of Yes was going to decimate 2 of their historic districts. One thing I wondered about in their assertion was how many churches in those districts are landmarked and might benefit from City of Yes. Could you talk a little more about why some might think that this is going to go after historic districts when I think City of Yes is trying to improve things in those districts?
Great question. I just want to say at the outset, we are not changing LPC oversight of historic districts and landmarks at all. That exists outside the zoning and will remain. I sat next to Mark Silverman, General Counsel of LPC at an event at Historic Districts Council put on. And he, that this question came up and he just said directly, no, this will not affect LPC oversight of historic districts and landmarks at all, period. End of story. I do think that, preservation organizations, they often are nervous around anything that seems like it will enable new development. That said, we've heard from the head of MAS, Elizabeth Goldstein. She said, this is a good plan, doing a little bit everywhere, taking a comprehensive approach in a way that's respectful of neighborhood character. She wrote an op-ed in favor of it, which was really amazing. We've had a number of great panel discussions with Historic District Council, which has written a letter of support for us as well. So I think the novel approach here, the a little bit everywhere, is landing with the civic-minded folks, the more reasonable civic-minded folks in these organizations. And so, I'll pass it over to Dan too.
Yeah, I think the only other thing that I would add to that is that those of us who care about historic preservation, of which I certainly count myself, also want to think about the individual landmarks that are stuck, that don't have the ability to use air rights that are on their site, and as a result may be falling apart or struggling or whatever. And the program that we have today has really been not used in any meaningful way. And so to me, I would think, and this is perhaps what animated MAS, it certainly would be what animates me, would want to have a little bit more flexibility for individual landmarks for their own sake of survival and care of those key historic resources for the city and for themselves, to transfer those air rights a little bit more, and really it's just a little bit, while preserving the Landmarks Commission's ability to bless or reject anything. So to me, I don't see it the way, I understand the way it was described in that resolution, but I don't see it that way. I actually think it's an important tool for individual landmarks, and perhaps will allow us to create some housing in the process. But this is a real, actually important tool for preservationists.
So while we still have Commissioner Rodnick and John on the phone, I know that we did have some questions that had come in ahead of time from Maida and Jody Stein. And I know they want to ask these questions to the Commissioner and to John. And so we want to respect your time, Commissioner, and move those in a little bit ahead of the presentation. So Jody and then Maida.
Thank you, Rashida. Hi.
Hi, Jody. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good, good, good to see you.
Good to see you. Hi, John. So first of all, thank you so much. I'm Jody Stein for everybody. I didn't introduce myself before. I'm with Shepherd Mullen. I'm Land Use and Zoning Counsel to the Interfaith Affordable Housing Coalition, which put together partly this call. And basically what, first of all, City of Yes, big fan, and including housing opportunity. I think there's some really amazing changes here that will benefit the city greatly, basically, in line with what you said. So there's actually two things in representing the interfaith community and houses of worship that are kind of an impediment. So basically what we do is we take different sites and look to see if they have any additional floor area that would allow them to build affordable or supportive housing. And in doing that, obviously we run up against a lot of zoning limitations, particularly with regard to distance between buildings and also lot coverage. And these houses of worship are typically one story. They typically have roofs that are not flat. They are not meant to be built on. We're not looking to tear them down. And so I know that, when the task force had met, these were things that were kind of ruminated, where, I didn't see those really addressed in the City of Yes. And were they planned to? I can get into them in more detail, but I think you guys might know what I'm talking about. And if not, is there going to be a follow-up for this, just to allow these institutions, which could also, like landmarks, use the money, right, to help their parishes or other interfaith houses of worship, and also build an affordable housing and utilize the development rights that are on their property.
So Jody, I can tell you it's in there. We are making several changes that make it much easier for existing churches, which, as you note, may not comply with all the zoning regulations today, since these are very often very old buildings, make it much easier to add new development on the same zoning lot as churches that may not comply with the zoning. We're doing that. As far as distance between buildings and lot coverage, we're also addressing that in the proposal. If you want specifics, which we're working on with some technical advisors to the faith-based community, just email me offline rather than, us getting into zoning references here on this call.
Okay, great. Great. Glad to hear it. Thank you.
Sure. Again, my name is Maida Brunzema from the Collective for Community, Culture, and Environment, and I'm a board member of the Interfaith Affordable Housing Collaborative and Bricks and Mortals. And we do a lot of work for nonprofit housing as well as faith communities. So I have a few comments that address affordability and the specific issues that pertain to faith properties. And the first is something that Mark already addressed, which is, why are there so few affordability requirements and no affordability guarantees in this law? And even the universal affordability preference is unpredictable because it's voluntary. So developers may choose not to take it. So this is very concerning because the need is the greatest at the very lowest income band. It is astonishing how little affordable housing is available to very, very low income New Yorkers, right? And supply side trickle down has not really worked in New York City historically, especially at the low rent levels. So you know, and there's a lot of unused FAR, unused development space that is currently available that is not being built. And I'm wondering, the city has looked into what is preventing, you know, this unused FAR not to be used by developers. So that's one question.
Can I address that?
Yeah, sure.
These are the proposals that are addressing the issues that prevent people from developing housing and affordable housing. These emerge directly from our citywide fair housing report, which, if you look at where we live, New York City, goes bit by bit by bit, neighborhood by neighborhood, looking at the obstacles, the impediments, the layers of restrictions over the years that prevent development of housing and affordable housing, especially in higher income parts of the city. These proposals emerge directly from that work. And so we hear you 100%. And these are the proposals that are in Chapter 6 there in order to address every single issue you just brought up in the most effective way
voluntary, except the voluntary.
Can I wait, John? Can I just jump in on that, because I got to go in a sec, and then I'll leave it to you to handle all the other hard stuff. Everything's voluntary as it relates to housing creation. The city is not. We can't force somebody to develop their own property if it is not in their economic interest to do so. And we also know that the city makes the rules that we hope will incentivize somebody to take advantage of whatever it is that we want them to do. In this situation, and I understand your point, because we want people to not sit on vacant land. We want people to have reason to act. And that is really why we are proposing rules that allow for a little bit more to be able to spur opportunity. But as it relates to voluntary versus mandatory, we have the most aggressive mandatory program as it relates to affordable housing in the country. And that stays. And that's important. We use it regularly and we'll continue to use it. It's an important tool for us. It was controversial when it came in. I had the pleasure of voting for it when I was in the city council. It should stick around and it should stay robust and strong. But what we're talking about doing here is creating opportunities that will deliver us affordable housing. We're not giving, in the context of our universal affordability preference, you only get additional development rights if all of that is for affordable. So you today could have done market rate development and you could still do that market rate development. But we are trying to incentivize the opportunity for the creation of affordable. And I think it's just really important to remember, and it's important for everybody to remember that, the city can incentivize. The city can create rules that we hope somebody will take advantage of and create the housing that we want them to deliver to us. And that's what we are trying to do. We're looking to add.
I have a question.
Okay. Is that you, Gail?
Let me just say, okay, go ahead, Gail. Dan.
All right, I got to go in a sec, but I got to hear my friend Gail, though, because if I leave now, I'm in trouble with
No, you're not in trouble, but what I don't understand is in the very developed areas, like the west side and the east side, where there are churches that are either landmark or not, we don't want them torn down, but the HPD has told us for the last 20 years that they will not put any subsidy into Manhattan. Now they do in some portions of the Lower East Side and Harlem, but not the West Side. So we end up with, to be honest with you, market housing. We've got tons of that, and just a very small amount of affordable. So my question to you is, how do you expect to deal with this issue on, areas that are very, very developed? The churches could, like in your proposal, do, the thing that we did on the East Side, which is larger spaces to do the air rights. However, where they land, what does that get us? Does that get us affordable housing? No. So it's not an easy issue in developed areas. I don't think your proposal does a lot for developed areas. Well, how do you answer that?
I'm going to let John do it, Gail, because I'm 5 minutes.
No, it's fine. John can do it.
But he'll be able to do it better than me anyway. But I think it's an excellent question. And let me just say, thank you to all of you because I have to run.
Thank you.
But we appreciate it. And Gail, I'll talk to you later on too.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody. We'll hope to see you on Wednesday. Okay.
So first off, council member, I want to say that I was at the initiative that you sponsored around faith-based organizations when you were
Yes.
borough president, and I was a
Yes.
presenter at those types of those events, like maybe 2
And
or
I
3.
remember. Yes.
And you know what? We're taking several proposals, several things that you proposed as part of those initiatives as borough president, and we are including them in our housing opportunity proposal. So we're excited for that, and we thank you for the impetus that you gave us in order to do things like expand the ability of landmarked churches to sell development rights in the vicinity, the ability of churches to do infill affordable housing development on their zoning lots. Your work was a really important aspect of where we are today on the cusp of, finally making some of those changes. As for your questions, what does this do for higher income areas?
Not higher income, just overdeveloped. We're overdeveloped. We're the most developed area in the United States of America. That's what I understand.
So the main thing that we are doing in medium and high density districts, the two things I want to mention to you are universal affordability preference, which for the first time implements an inclusionary framework across all medium and high density districts. Today, the inclusionary framework applies to about 13% of medium and high density districts. Tomorrow, on any site within a medium and high density district, if you want to max out your site, the only way to do that is with permanent affordable housing at an average of 60% AMI. That's the only way to do it. If you don't do that, then you're basically punished. You can't get above your existing market rate cap at all. And that's huge. Implementing an inclusionary framework across all medium and high density districts from 13% to 100%. We expect an order of magnitude more affordable housing. Like I said, this framework works today. Almost every site takes advantage of it. You need a tax benefit in order to do multifamily housing. The tax benefit requires mixed income. If you want to build a bigger building, you have to drive down affordability levels and you have to provide more units. And so those things work together. It's an engine for affordable housing that we are dramatically expanding, and we're very excited about that. Next, conversions. We're taking our regulations that enable conversions from non-residential to residential. This is another thing that was like ripped from the faith-based task force report to the mayor. And we are taking those regulations and we're expanding them citywide. Today, it doesn't apply on the Upper West Side in your district. If you wanted to convert, an old office building or an old non-residential building to housing, it's very difficult in that part of the city today. As it is, if you're out in, Jamaica, Queens or whatever, it doesn't work there either. And so churches around the city have told us we want access to those adaptive reuse regulations as well. If we have an old, convent or monastery or old school building or outbuilding. I heard from, Dr. Punter in Harlem, his church has, owns commercial properties that they would like to convert. So we are loosening those regulations as well, or giving the full city access to the regulations that have worked so well in core Manhattan areas. And there's a state level tax incentive that will get affordability out of conversions now as well. So it's not going to be like you saw in the financial district in the 90s or whatever, lots of conversions just to market rate housing. We're going to get 25% affordable out of those conversions now, which is another game changer, to use a phrase. So we're extremely excited in particular about what this means, opportunities in the highest incomes in the most densely developed parts of the city, to put them back on the map. And, many of those areas have had a hard time developing housing in recent years, and these adjustments will enable them to contribute again.
I don't want to take time, Mark, but I will add that if you are doing 25%, in some areas you can get to 50% if HPD will give you some subsidy. And they have refused in these high income areas to give subsidy because they say we get more for the dollar in the Bronx, which is why the Bronx gets inundated. So I just want to point out, you got to get HPD to help more, because I don't care how much you put in terms of your tax incentives, you need that subsidy in order to make the term sheets work. And they don't work unless you have the subsidy. And HPD has said, no, no, no. So I just want to make that clear. Doesn't work without it. And I'm sorry, Mark, I don't talk anymore.
No, I
Yeah.
would say, Gail, if we could talk about that, it's correct. HPD tends to subsidize in places where market rate development can't support affordable
I
housing.
know, and that doesn't make any sense. We have the best schools, we have the transportation, and they refuse. And so far, they refuse. And without that, it's not going to work.
Yeah, and I
Right.
think as Peter Cook been reminding us, there are things that the City of Yes does and other things the City of Yes does not do. There's a question about bonds, affordable housing bonds. The fact is that City of Yes enables the development. It does not produce the development. We need other entities, state and city, HPD, and others to actually provide the resources that City of Yes enables, right? And so let's realize the limitations here, but we're doing something very important that other entities have to play their part in.
Right. Yeah, we're working with our sister agencies. City Council and the mayor just came to a budget agreement that includes another $2 billion for affordable housing split between HPD and NYCHA. These zoning changes are absolutely necessary for HPD and NYCHA to maximize that amount of money to create as much permanently affordable housing as possible. We're working hand in glove with, subsidies, bond financing, things like that in order to, we have to do all these things together.
Excuse me, John, isn't
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Isn't HPD and NYCHA under HUD?
NYCHA is under that's federally sponsored
Okay.
affordable housing. HPD is a city agency, which is far and away the biggest
but I
producer of
believe
affordable housing in the nation.
They're all under HUD. And do you remember who first started this housing initiative? It was Bloomberg. And I don't think it was the best
That's
idea.
not correct. That's not correct.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, where I reside in the Bronx, this was a housing initiative by Bloomberg. A lot of areas were vacant or desolate. And, it's just turned into something else over the years. I wanted to know your thoughts on the housing trust. Again, we had Mayor de Blasio. He went on this whole mental health campaign. I lived in the project at one time. It's not healthy. You're working a 12-hour shift. You come home, the elevator, the hallways, vestibules are disgusting. This does affect your mental health. So, and then I wanted to ask about landlords. You could charge anything if you're renting out any unit. So don't you think rent may have to be decreased?
John, you've been asked a lot, but really the question is about the different initiatives of different government agencies and different administrations.
Yeah, I would say first off on the Bloomberg issue, in many ways we are undoing some of the damage that we saw from the Bloomberg era. The Bloomberg administration downzoned massive swaths of lower density New York in a way that basically killed housing production in those areas. You used to see housing production even in lower density parts of the city. During the first decade of this century, about 40% of the city was rezoned in a way that mostly made it harder to produce housing in those areas. Today, if you see anything there, it's only a single family home. That puts a ton of pressure on the rest of the city. It really drives gentrification and displacement pressure in other parts of the city. So we are trying to make minor adjustments to, for instance, bring back modest multifamily in low density areas, to make sure that zoning districts do what they say they can so that every neighborhood can contribute. As far as NYCHA goes, we absolutely want to support NYCHA in its efforts to address its capital backlog. You're totally correct that many developments are really struggling today. We're working closely with NYCHA Real Estate, NYCHA Strategic Planning, and the Citywide Council on Presidents as well, where we're talking to the tenants associations as well to help NYCHA do things like, public housing trust, RAD Pact, 100% affordable infill on campuses around the city. All of those things also, by the way, require sign-off from the tenants associations on those campuses. You can't do it without approval of the tenants association in a way that has really helped NYCHA turn the corner in the last 5 or so years in a way that we want to do everything we can to support. As far as landlords go,
really can't
as far as landlords go, you are absolutely correct that in a situation like today where there's not enough housing, landlords have all the power. They have all the power. They don't have to fix it when your bathroom ceiling falls in. They can charge anything you want in rent. If we want to shift the balance of power away from landlords towards tenant, We need to find ways to create more housing. And this is exactly what these proposals aim to do. I want to get back to those core messages, which is today, the status quo. We do not have enough housing in the city, and the people who end up getting the short end of the stick are the folks at the lower end of the income spectrum. Where does that come from? If you look at where we live, our fair housing report, it emerges from the fact that 9 community districts today produce as much housing as the other 50. We need to create more fairer, more equitable housing development in the city in order to address the problems that particularly afflict the people lower down the income chain. And so we have to keep a view of that core. It's a moral issue, that core moral issue.
But
the status quo is forcing people to suffer, and we need to do something to address it.
But don't you think the city is overpopulated with buildings? I mean, if you're building in every nook and cranny, these can cause health complications and issues.
I'll put it this way, and this goes to Reverend Wood's question as well. If we say too much, not enough, we're done building housing, the city is full, people will continue to move here. And who will get pushed out?
Not if they're vacant, not if there are buildings that are not vacant or buildings that are not standing to where they're saying,
Vacancy
oh,
rates,
this looks like a good property we can convert.
I will say vacancy rates are at the lowest since 1968. We absolutely want to enable more conversion of non-residential, like an office building, to residential. If we do that, that's the beginning of a solution to this problem, but we need to do all the other things as well. If we expect conversion, we could do like 10,000 units. Great. That's not nothing, but it does not get anywhere near addressing the magnitude of the challenge, which is hundreds of thousands of units in shortfall. So we need to do everything. It's both and. Everybody's ideas are great, but we need to do
right. But then there's a false sense of hope within religious organizations and healthcare.
Excuse me. We have 10 minutes left until the end of this portion of our conversation, and I think your concerns are very important. But we want to, we also it's important to know that Bloomberg is not this administration. That NYCHA is, and HPD and the federal government are all different entities with different players. We're trying to do here, what John and the city planning department are trying to do, is to provide an opportunity to make a difference. And it's always a balancing act. There's always a balancing act. But I think the key message here is that more housing serves everyone, and less housing only serves those who could afford that housing and does not serve those who cannot. The people who are struggling to find housing are not served by the lack of affordable housing. And I think this is an effort to make a difference. And I'm glad that John mentioned that this is going to go for a long way to undo a lot of what the Bloomberg administration did. I think many of us saw that it did not serve the poor. And this is an attempt to right some of those wrongs. But before we finish, we have 10 minutes left until at the end of this portion of the conversation. I want to invite Lara to join us, because a big part of what we're doing today is to give people an opportunity to think about whether they want to participate in the City Planning Commission hearing on Wednesday that will look at the City of Yes. Again, John and Dan are with the Department of City Planning. City Planning Commission is a public agency, public board that reviews public concerns about changes in city planning. And so, Laura, if you're here, why don't you tell us what we're going to expect for Wednesday, and how those of us who are interested might prepare. And then we're going to take a 2-minute break at 11:28. Then we're going to come back for another half an hour for those who want to be part of that Planning Commission hearing on Wednesday. So, Laura, if you're here, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mark. And thank you all for these great questions. We're really excited to hear more of your thoughts on it. And Meta, I see your hands raised. I didn't know if you had another question, but I did hear from you that you'd like to participate. So let me get a little bit of that out of the way. So as Mark mentioned, the Department of City Planning puts a proposal together that enters the public review process that the City Planning Commission oversees and deliberates on. For the last 60 days, the community boards have been reviewing this proposal, and we know that over 50 of the boards have already voted. And so now we need to start having the City Planning Commission begin reviewing that material, begin hearing from all of you and our fellow New Yorkers. So the public hearing is one component of how you can participate in making sure that the City Planning Commission knows your thoughts on this and where your support is and where modifications maybe that you are interested in having part of that conversation. So the public hearing is always on Wednesday. They start at 10 a.m. The meeting starts at 10 a.m. Let me backtrack that. We will have a couple operation things that we need to take, that the commission needs to take ahead of time to get those out of the way. So we anticipate, and then John will and his team will give about a 5-10 minute presentation to kind of summarize where we've been on this journey with City of Yes. They are also presenting today, and Mark, I can send you the link at the public review, the City Planning Commission review session. So they'll do an extensive presentation today at during the meeting that starts at 1 p.m. And then they'll do a short one just to remind everybody why we're here. And then, so we anticipate that the public testimony will start at probably 10:30-ish is my guess. To sign up for it, I will send the link again. You need to sign up ahead of time, or you can sign up when you sign in to either the Zoom meeting, or you can participate in person as well and visit us at 120 Broadway in the basement where the Planning Commission hearing room is. And you sign up and it becomes like just you're next in line. We are anticipating a lot of people joining. So we really encourage you to use the link, which will likely be up at 8:30, knowing that technology sometimes has some hiccups. But I will make sure that Mark and others have the content as soon as it's available. And we'll send you, you can sign up online to either speak in person, speak in Zoom, or speak via phone. We will be kind of keeping you informed. You can reach out to me directly to know, like, if, what time slots are you thinking? Everyone gets 3 minutes to speak. So that we can make sure everyone is heard. We do not end the hearing until everybody has had a chance to speak. So, the commissioners, DCP staff will be here as long as it needs to be. What else can I tell you? So I will make sure that you have that link, you can have you'll all have access to my email. I'll make sure to make myself available to let you know. I can't tell you exact timing, but I can say, you're in the next 10 speakers or something like that. So it will be a long day. So I encourage you to sign up on via the link as early as you can.
Lauren, let me ask you a question about the process. So
yeah.
As we've heard, many of the community boards have expressed reservations. Of course, they're not decisive. I mean, they're only advisory. But the city council members are certainly looking closely at what their community boards are saying.
Yes.
So what do you anticipate happening at the Planning Commission considering that there's been a lot of concerns expressed and a lot of council members feeling the pressure to not be supportive? What can you imagine happening there?
I think you're going to hear a lot of voices in support and requests for, things to consider for modifying, whether it's at the CPC level or whether it's at the council member level. But I do feel strongly, we've been to over 180 community board meetings. I've been to the Upper West Side one as well, where the council member has oversees. And there is a lot of support. There are concerns. It's very hard for everyone to digest how this will impact, what differences it will make. And it's our job to make sure that we're continuing to clarify and to hear and to make changes where it makes sense for the proposal. So I think we'll see a really robust conversation throughout the city planning commission and through the council member.
Yeah,
the
let me
council
just
hearing.
pick that up, Laura. I've got my start at city planning about 10 years ago on another citywide initiative that was intended to support affordable housing production, zoning for quality and affordability. And we got basically zero support at the community board level. Like, you know, maybe there were 4 community boards that were not outright no's, I think, if I remember correctly. We are doing so much better than that at the community board level this time around. The conversations have been better. We've done years of legwork. I've done well over 100 meetings with stakeholders over the last year on these plans, and so we've gotten really thoughtful feedback. It's sort of inherent to the public review process that, you know, neighborhoods are often just skeptical of citywide actions. Like, how's this going to affect my neighborhood? You know, we hear from community boards again and again, why do I care about what's going on in other parts of the city? You know, my job is to care about what's happening in the community board. But then when you move to the citywide level, where these policy issues are just in your face, unavoidable. Like Dan says, inaction is not an option around the housing shortage now. It's, you know, it's just, it's affecting ever greater numbers of New Yorkers with each passing year. If we don't do anything to address this, you know, it's really hard to say where the city is going. And so you'll see the balance of support shift towards the idea that we need to do something on a citywide level to address, like I said, this like fundamental, crucial human issue, which I see as a moral issue. And so, you know, we're hopeful that the community board stage has really set the table for a great period at City Planning Commission and then on to City Council.
Thank you.
Jody, Mark, Jody and Maida have their hands up and want to be
Good.
sure they ask, but
Absolutely.
just a question, Laura. So you are going to put a link in the chat and we fill out that link if we want to testify. Is that right?
Correct.
And the testimony will be allowed from 10 to 12 or as long as it takes.
I would suspect that we will be through the evening hearing testimony.
Okay, so it's not just 10 to 12.
It's
No.
not, it actually just, it's not in our, it's updated in our, I'm dropping the link right now, sorry, I'm trying to multitask. It's updated that to 10 p.m. Just to make sure people know that they can join at any point and we will still be listening to testimony.
So
Thanks,
Jody
Laura.
had a question, Mark.
Yeah, but also I just wanted to say, Peter, before, so Laura just included a link to sign up. I'm also including a link. If anyone is interested in learning more after our meeting today, there'll be a meeting of the New York Housing Conference of an effort that they put together called Yes to Housing with the Deputy Mayor, Springer. And if you want to be part of that conversation at 1:30 today, I believe, you need to sign up as a member to join the Yes to Housing Coalition. Just click on that link and you can join, and then you'll get the link to the meeting today with the Deputy Mayor. So I encourage everyone to do that, not only for today, but the New York Housing Conference is a terrific agency, terrific group. You'll learn so much. I learn so much every time I attend those meetings, and we'd love to have more faith leaders on those meetings. Generally, it's just me and Peter and often Terry Troya, and we need more faith leaders to be part of that conversation. But sorry, go ahead, Jody.
I just wanted to add to the link that I gave you. This is just for the meeting invite, but it will go, there will be a live link at 8:30 in the morning on Wednesday that will allow you to sign up for the actual hearing.
Great, thanks.
Okay, you can't sign up then before 8:30 by going there? You can or can't?
It won't be live. So we asked for sign up the day of is when you sign up. But I have emails of all of yours to make sure that you're aware when the link is up and have that ready for you.
Okay, so you got to do it Wednesday morning.
Wednesday morning, correct?
That, we should make that really clear to people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Mark, can we hear from Jody?
Yeah, Jody, please.
Yep, actually, given the time, I'm gonna follow up with John, as I talked about before. I just wanted to say that the lot coverage, I know that you've addressed lot coverage 70% to 80% and like things like minimum distance between buildings to 40 feet, but on smaller sites, and we'll talk about this, you know, which are what we look at. And those are the churches and the religious institutions that we look at. They don't have 40 feet to spare. So it makes it impossible to build housing. So, but I'll, you know, email with you offline.
Thank you.
Great.
Okay,
And
so
Maida has had her hand up for a while.
yeah, Meta,
I just
go
want to
ahead.
get Maida in. She's really had her
Thank
hand up
you,
for a bit.
Meta.
Real quick, I just wanted to talk about houses of faith in particular as they relate to landmarks. So the first is, our houses of faith, a special category that will benefit from City of Yes if they're neither a campus or a landmark. So that's one, okay. And is it possible, since the faith community and the affordable housing community are really very much about, you know, affordable housing, that the expected transfer of FAR from landmark buildings be exclusively or mainly clearly defined affordable housing, right? And finally, because the landmarks transfer zoning text, if it's implemented with authorizations but not special permits, would these authorizations have findings regarding population growth, infrastructure capacity, services, neighborhood character, climate risk, etc., to ensure that these landmarks transfers do not overwhelm the communities where they're being transferred to?
Yes, we have lots of stuff in here for faith-based organizations, whether you're a campus, whether you're a landmark. We have, like I said, ripped from the faith-based task force report. We are enabling adaptive reuse regulations citywide for any kind of outbuilding that you might own, making it more flexible to convert that to housing. We are making it much easier for faith-based organizations that have development rights and have a little bit of land to develop infill housing on their sites. We are completely eliminating parking requirements for houses of worship going forward, going retroactively, that will give congregations the ability to decide what they do with existing parking lots. Maybe you need it for congregants who've moved to the burbs. Maybe you want to do something on it. Great, you'll have that flexibility. We are enabling 3 to 5 story buildings on all faith-based organization sites for, you know, modest multifamily. If you're above 5,000 square feet, you will have that new allowance no matter where in the city you are. That's for community facilities, so could be a faith-based organization, could be a library, whatever, but that is special just for you. Expanding the program for landmark TDR as well. There is something for everybody in this, every faith-based organization in this proposal. As far as what were your questions about the landmark transfer program?
Because you are getting rid of special permits and it appears to use authorizations. You know, we're wondering if these authorizations would require findings about population growth, infrastructure capacity, neighborhood character, climate risk, et cetera, to ensure that this bulk that is transferred to neighboring properties is appropriate. So if we have
the findings it'll go from a special permit, which is totally unusable today because that special permit takes 2 years and costs hundreds of thousands of dollars. This special permit was created in 1968. An authorization today is more onerous than a special permit was in 1968. So, you know, process.
No, I understand that, but we're trying to see if there are checks and balances
the findings for the authorization remain the same as they are today, and they relate to, you know, is there a continuing maintenance plan for the landmark, and is any bulk modifications that you need on the receiving site, are they appropriate to the neighborhood? Do they impinge on the landmark? So we're not changing the findings, we're just reducing the process a little bit in order to actually create a viable pathway. You know, for instance, today, completely unworkable. You can't really use a special permit if you're a landmark. You know, it's just too much process. The transfer rate, I see, you know, Jody nodding her head. The transfer radius is too tight. It does not create opportunities for people today. When I presented the proposed changes to a landmark church in Crown Heights, whose roof is caving in, they were so excited because it will actually meaningfully create opportunities for them to sell their unused development rights to multiple properties in the area in a way that will actually enable them to preserve the landmark in sound first-class status as required under law. Your other question, why not require the landmark TDRs to be for affordable housing?
Right.
The purpose of the landmark TDR program is to compensate landmarks that have maintenance obligations that are particular to them and the inability to use those development rights on the site. So that's the purpose. You go back to 1968, it's to provide revenue to landmarks in order to compensate them for the burdens of landmark status. We've heard this from a few organizations, like, why not condition it on affordable housing? If you condition it on affordable housing, that makes the value of your development rights negative. Because, affordable housing requires subsidy from the government in order to make it work. If we are taking landmark TDRs, a program that was intended to compensate landmarks, and rendering their development rights negative in value, then what's the point? We've completely undermined the purpose of the program. So we understand the calls for affordable housing in every possible circumstance. We in New York City, we are far and away, city planning and HPD, we are far and away the best at producing affordable housing of any city in the country. We do tens of thousands of units every year. These proposals are calibrated to get affordable housing in every circumstance that we can and to maximize the amount of affordable housing at newer, lower AMIs. And so I am extremely proud about these proposals. They're the biggest with respect to affordable housing that we've ever done, period.
Yeah, Meta, I want to thank you and John for getting a little bit to the weeds, but no one has left. So obviously it's of interest to everyone to learn more about this plan. John, I just wanted to ask you, Rashida was suggesting that are there some slides? A lot of the folks who are here today were not with us the last two presentations. Are there a few slides that you might want to share that would illustrate, particularly with the faith community, what the options are included in this plan?
Sure. I don't think we have time to do the full presentation I gave the last couple times, but I can do the intro slide that goes through some of the things that I mentioned. Let me see if I can do a slideshow.
Also, John, I want to do a time check. We both have another obligation we need to be at. So I want to.
So maybe about 5 minutes and we'll go. We're 5 or 10 minutes, but yeah. And you could provide a link as well, John, so people can take a look. But yeah, let's see what because it's been such very impressive. It's so good to see the pictures. So you're on. You got 5 or 10 minutes to all
right, can you hear me? And can you see that? Yeah. And I gotta say, I hope nobody is put off by how animated I get about this. But when we were doing our fair housing report 4 years ago, it was so great to be able to come up with an actual list of things that we could do to address, high housing costs, segregation in the city, lack of affordable housing, gentrification and displacement pressures, overcrowding, homelessness. And I thought that there was no way that we would ever have the political will to attempt a lot of these things. And I am gratified by how much the conversation has changed over the last 4 years so that we actually are trying to do a full citywide proposal that addresses the range of these concerns. And I believe in them so much. My background, like I said, has only ever been in fair housing, affordable housing creation, creating limited equity co-ops, working for community-based organizations that work on land use and development across the city. So I believe in these proposals so much, and we really want support from folks like you whose voices mean a ton in the public review process. People really respect you in particular. And so I just want folks to recognize that this is just the biggest thing that's ever come down the pike, and to be able to come out and just say, whether or not these pass, it's totally not certain. We could totally fail. We could crash and burn, in a way that just leaves us back where we started. We really want to get this over the top in a way that addresses concerns of communities across the city. And I think we can do it, but we would need your support. So some of the things we're doing for faith-based organizations in particular, the conversions, expanding that citywide. Any outbuilding across the city, that churches own could be converted from non-residential to residential under these proposals, as long as you're in a district that allows residential in a way that creates additional opportunities. We today, look at this picture right here. The church today doesn't comply with the existing zoning. It's set too far back from the street. And that would prevent modern contextual height limited infill on that lot, because it doesn't comply with contextual zoning regulations, and so you can't do infill. We're adjusting the regulations there so that you would be able to do this 5-story affordable housing and community facility space on top of an underused parking lot today. That is something that this proposal would do new for you. Next, in lower density areas, if your site is above 5,000 square feet, you will have a new higher residential FAR. That means you get more floor area for residential if you want to either develop on the campus, or we've seen this a ton. If you're a storefront church, you want to redevelop the site with a new church on the ground floor and cellar with 2, 3, 4 stories of residential on top. We will enable you to do that without having to come and beg City Planning Commission for permission to do that. It makes a ton of sense in those areas and commercial districts already. That's the existing building type, 2, 3, 4 stories of residential above a non-residential ground floor. We want you to be able to do that without years of process. And then we've talked about landmark TDRs. We want to take a program that does not work today for any religious landmarks. Basically, if you're outside of Midtown or financial district, doesn't do anything for you. And we want to make that an actual workable tool for the landmark faith-based organizations in Crown Heights or in Washington Heights or what have you, places that today don't have a realistic opportunity. And so at that core, that inner circle, we're doing a ton for faith-based organizations, but I don't want to lose sight of congregations that are having a hard time because congregants are disappearing because of high housing costs. And I don't want to lose sight of the leadership role that faith-based organizations play as part, the moral leadership role that they play as we address policy issues across the city. I have to say, Reverend Troya speaking out in Staten Island, there's a lot of opposition in Staten Island. Having Reverend Troya speak out in Staten Island was a powerful moment. Having Reverend Fultz Morrison speak out in Riverdale, again, a low density district, pretty wealthy up there, a lot of opposition to this. Having him speak out in that context was probably the most powerful moment of public review that I've seen here. And so we are hoping that you can be voices in support, as we move to the City Planning Commission and help us, at long last, address some of these really pressing issues that we face in New York City.
I'm sorry, John, just one comment. I know this is for New York City, but in Connecticut, they had a congregational church that had collapsed. So I reside in an area where there are many churches. And what we wanted to do, and I spoke with Reverend Cook about this, is actually give the church a facelift so it doesn't collapse or, create a hazard. Allow them a limestone, heavy stones. How can we fix them before it winds up like something in Connecticut where construction is happening and now there's a disaster and the church is no longer?
No, that's a great question. And all of the things that we mentioned, whether it's being able to sell landmark development rights, whether it's being able to do infill development, whether it's being able to convert buildings, those are all opportunities that your congregation can take advantage of in order to, generate revenue that can help sustain the congregation into the future ahead. Like I said, I'm at St. Mary's, Lower East Side. It's the second oldest Catholic church in the city. I don't know where we'd be as a congregation without the folks who, without the development that we've done on the campus and without the folks who live there that help the congregation to thrive. And so things like that, whether it's physical plant or whether it's even just people in the pews, I really, really think that these proposals support both of those things.
Yeah, the NYPD also has real estate, so it's just interesting. All right.
Yeah, thank you. So do we have any more questions for John? John and Lara have to go to some other business, the same project, but another group, I suppose. And we really appreciate the amount of time you've given us, John, particularly, and Lara. It's so great to have you. And great that you're able to get your chair to join us. I think it's been a terrific conversation. It will all be recorded. Will all be available. We'll be sending copies of the recording to everybody who's attended and everybody who's registered. But before we go, do anyone else have any questions or concerns for John, other than just thanking you for doing this great work? As we know, politics is the art of the possible. It's not everything, but we cannot allow the perfect to be the enemy of the good. We know that even if our work here today has produced one affordable housing unit, that's one family that's been housed that would not have been housed if not for our work. And I think it'll do a lot more than that. As a friend said, this may not be everything we want, but if we work hard, it will be much more than what we have now. And that's really the objective, is to move the conversation along. And I think get people to realize that we can work together and do good things for each other, that we can really trust each other. Government is not all about helping the developers get rich. We have some terrific public servants. Gail Brewer is one, John is another. I'm sure Lara, I don't know you very well, but I trust that you're also in that group. There are some very good public servants. We need to support them because they really have, I think, our best interests at heart. And others who are concerned, let's get them to meet these folks. I mean, clearly you people are speaking from the heart, and you're speaking on behalf of those who are frankly not here to speak on their own behalf. So I just want to thank you.
John, will you take another question or two, or do you have to go?
Sure.
I have a question.
So I'd like to ask a question. And then
Peter, and then
And Lorna.
so
Lorna's next.
one of the criticisms we have is that this does not really address very low income people or homeless people. And yet I see in your proposal provision for improved SROs and also supportive housing. I noticed this in Community Board 8, where they criticize the city of Yes for not addressing that population, but then they also go after SROs and supportive housing and don't want it. So how do you thread that needle?
So, zoning is one part of what the city can do for the most vulnerable, lowest income populations in New York City. Let's start with zoning alone. What zoning alone does here. First off, the universal affordability preference, by driving affordability down to 60 and enabling income averaging, absolutely will create 30% units, extremely low income units that do serve families at basically the lowest incomes, that affordable housing has ever served through the zoning. And that's alone. We're talking privately financed developments on privately owned sites. The city doesn't own the land. The city is not providing subsidy. And yet we will be providing housing for extremely low income families. That's huge. Next, every single UAP unit we create, the universal affordability preference, the program that we expect to create about 20,000 units of affordable housing in the next 10 to 15 years. Voucher holders disproportionately apply for those new income restricted units and disproportionately benefit from those income restricted units. And so we're talking families with zero income. Every additional income restricted unit we can create through universal affordability preference benefits voucher holders, families that, may earn zero income at all. Next, all these changes are necessary for HPD to be able to deploy their subsidy efficiently for affordable rental projects, for affordable home ownership projects. A lot of the changes that we're making in low density areas to re-legalize modest multifamily there are perfect building types for affordable home ownership. The zoning can't make them affordable home ownership on our own. That's beyond the legal authority of zoning, but we can work with HPD to ensure that the zoning is in place for them to use their authority to provide subsidy to create new affordable home ownership and affordable rentals throughout the city. So there's that. And then, yes, shared and small housing, shared housing in particular, the core of that work is HPD working on shared housing models, that is housing that may share cooking facilities or other type of common spaces. HPD is working on re-legalizing that for different models of affordable housing. We've also looked to other jurisdictions that have re-legalized that for non-regulatory agreement projects as well. We find it provides an important type of housing for smaller households, sometimes older households, sometimes marginally housed households as well, in a way that we really want to support. For instance, the city has been working, HPD, DCP has been working for about 10 years now on an informal SRO down in Chinatown. And we have been unable to legalize it to protect those tenants, preserve that as affordable housing going forward because the zoning doesn't allow it. These changes will finally enable us with Asian Americans for Equality, AFI, with HPD, with their legal representation at Take Root, will finally enable us to legalize that informal housing. So it goes to show you another way that zoning can stand in the way of creating affordable housing. So all those things are adjustments that we're making in order to create affordable housing or clear the way for HPD to do what they do best. But again, this is the biggest proposal for affordable housing we've ever made, and it absolutely does serve extremely low-income families and below. And I don't want to hear otherwise because it does. We created these proposals in order to do specifically this.
Thanks, John. And Rashida, you said someone else had a question?
Yeah, I have a question, and it lends to address, I'm sure most of you have seen what Faith United Methodist Church has been undergoing since we have opened our doors to accommodate the asylees. Who will run to our aid and to address the community concern? I wish we had attended a forum as this to finding out whether we're qualified to be in a situation that we're in right now. There have been many community meetings, and there will be community meetings coming up to finding out whether did we do the right thing, were we educated, were the community informed. We need help. We need help. You must have seen they are putting placards on our doors and they're calling us names, and we're in the center of whether or not should we continue. We're standing on staying the course because this is what Jesus would want us to do, to help and to open our doors. But from a legalistic point of view and a zoning point of view, are we in the right place at the right time? We need help.
I just want to thank you and your congregation for the incredibly important work that you're doing. And of course, I can't tell you how to proceed from here. It's unfortunate when a lot of the burden created by the lack of housing falls on organizations such as yours, on neighborhoods, on other entities where, really the city has to step up and take the lead here. The migrant crisis has been sudden, but it definitely contributes to the housing shortage in this city. And so while these proposals are intended to create only new housing for permanent occupancy, we absolutely want to move people from the shelter system into permanent, affordable or supportive housing as necessary in order to just take some of the pressure off of organizations like yours who have been, and I just want to thank you again, frontline in this most recent migrant crisis.
Also, I wanted to mention that Meta is working with NIDIS, New York Disaster Interfaith Services, to help congregations to qualify for providing 365 night a year overnight shelter for migrants. So we will get Meta's information or to you, or maybe Meta you can share, and maybe she can come and visit and see what help your congregation might benefit from NIDIS and their work.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Go ahead. Any other questions before we finish? Good. Well, we've done very well. We started with over 30 people. We're now almost at a little over 20. Thank you all for hanging in there, for listening and learning, and John and Lara for staying with us and all your great work. And thanks, Peter and Rashida and Meta and everyone else who contributed. I think it's been a very helpful conversation. As we said, everyone who's registered will get a copy of this conversation and information about the event on the 10th. This is an ongoing process. As we said, democracy is not a spectator sport. We have to get involved. You have to stand up and be counted. Let's make this the best it can be. Let's make sure that the city hears our concerns, responds to our concerns, and we'll make a better city for all of us. And thank you.
Just to say that the previous conversations are on the New York State Council of Churches YouTube channel, nyscoc.org, and we will put this one on the channel as well.
Very
And
good.
those are all publicly available.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
See
you.
you. See you soon. Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Great meeting.
Okay. So,
morning, everyone.
hi, Lorna.
Hi.
What'd you think?
Pardon?
Yeah, just, oh, here, I'll turn the recording off here.